Hello everyone and welcome back to the Workbench. Today we're going to be talking about 9mm versus .40 caliber and specifically the Glock 19 versus the Glock 23. Before we get started, of course, everything is completely unloaded. There is no ammunition present in either chamber. There's no ammunition present on the workbench, and we're not even going to be working with the magazines today. Before we compare and contrast, let's talk a little bit about how they came to be. The Germans, of course, invented the 9mm cartridge with the original Luger pistol, the 9x19 Luger. The .40 Smith & Wesson round was developed by Smith & Wesson in conjunction with the FBI back in the 90s. The FBI was looking for something that had a little more stopping power. At that time, technology did not allow the 9mm cartridge to be as effective as it is today. Of course, as most of you probably have heard in the news, the FBI is now switching from the .40 Smith & Wesson caliber back to the 9mm caliber. So a lot of people have been asking themselves, should I switch from my Glock 23 to a Glock 19, or my Glock 22 to a Glock 17, or my .40 caliber handgun to a 9mm handgun? If you have an opportunity, I highly recommend going out to a gun range near you that allows firearm rentals. Rent yourself a Glock 19 or a Glock 17 against either the Glock 23 or the Glock 22. Feel for yourself the difference between a .40 caliber recoil and a 9mm recoil. Also understand there's going to be a weight difference in the carry load. 115 grain is typical carry for the 9mm, 165 grain is a good carry load for the .40 caliber. Also expect an increase in price as you go up in calibers, so the .40 cal is going to cost a bit more than the 9mm. If you're considering buying either of these firearms, I think this video will provide a little bit of insight as to what to expect when you get one or the other. So from a firearms price standpoint, really they are both about identical. MSRPs are the same, average prices are the same, but you're going to find more used Glock 23s out there because there are a lot of law enforcement trade-ins on these. So if you don't mind a used gun, you can get a great deal on a Glock 23, about $350, $380. In addition to that, most Glock 23s that are trade-ins are going to come with some sort of upgraded sights. These are incredibly old sights, about 20 years old, but they are upgraded. They are night sights. They're Trigicon night sights. They still do have a very, very small amount of glow left, but you can see kind of the differences. Traditional 3-dot system, and this is the Glock proprietary U and dot system. These, of course, are two Gen 3 models. I'd like to point a couple things out, though. This basically is a brand new Gen 3, just purchased in 2016. This Gen 3, Glock 23, was purchased in 1994. So this is 22 years old as of the making of this film. And there are a few differences that I'd like to point out. So here, now that I've got these firearms apart, there are a couple differences that I'd like to draw your attention to. 22-year-old gun here, basically a brand new gun here. You'll notice first thing right up front, the serial number plate is manufactured differently nowadays than it was 22 years ago. Also, right off the bat, you'll notice that the ejector is bent a little bit on the 9mm frame and not so on the .40 caliber frame. I'm not an expert in Glock. I'm not an expert in how they go about and make their things. I'm more of a Smith & Wesson fan, but I don't know exactly why this is bent. I would assume because the 9mm cartridge is slightly smaller, that's why this one is, and because this was originally designed for a .40 caliber cartridge, that's why this one isn't bent. I don't know that to be fact, so weigh in the comments section below if you know why the newer versions are bent, especially on the 9mm, and the .40 caliber is not. Moving back to the sear and sear housing, I really don't see any difference there whatsoever. The trigger bar looks the same. Everything really looks the same. The slide stop is a little more pronounced on the 23 Gen 3, the 22-year-old gun. This one's a little more, let's say, slim, low profile, if you will. I also noticed there are numbers on the ejectors here. For instance, the Glock 19 has a number 336 stamped on it, and I don't know how well that's going to show up on the video, but the Glock 23 has an 1882 stamped on it. Alright, so now let's get into the rounds themselves, 9mm versus .40 caliber. 9mm is going to be lighter. It's also going to allow for higher capacity, 15+1 in standard configuration on the Glock 19. .40 caliber, a little bit more heavy, 165 grains, a typical carry load, 115 for the 9mm. But capacity is going to be a little bit down on the Glock. Not much, 13 plus 1 versus 15 plus 1 in standard configuration. So really you're not losing a whole lot in terms of capacity going from a 9mm to a 40 caliber, but you do lose some capacity. The average price for a 9mm standard full metal jacket Winchester white box round is going to be about 27 cents as of the making of this film. Same ammunition for a 40 caliber is going to be about 38 cents. So you're talking 11 cents every time you pull the trigger, which might not sound like a lot, but once you get up to about 100 rounds, it starts getting into the dollars, and then 1,000 rounds, you start getting into the tens of dollars. So if you don't mind paying a little extra, then a 40 caliber is no big deal. Self-defense ammunition, same kind of deal. About 79 cents a round for a Hornady critical defense 115 grain FTX round. That same round for the 40 caliber is $1.05. So you go basically from 80 cents to $1. It's about a 20-cent difference, a little more than that, about 28 cents. Recently, I had the opportunity to shoot both of these pistols side by side. I demonstrate this in the video as well, but you can take a Glock 19 slide assembly and put it on a Glock 23 frame, and of course vice versa, as you can see here. Now, I also demonstrate that it is completely functional, completely operational, as you see it here. So you might be asking yourself, okay, if I don't own a firearm right now, or if I don't own a firearm in either of these calibers right now, which one would be the best one to go out and purchase? Unfortunately, there's no right answer to that question. It's all about preference. If you really want a 40 caliber and it's something that you truly believe in, then there's nothing wrong with that. Go out and buy yourself a 40 caliber. It's going to be a little more expensive to train with, however, so just understand that. However, if you're looking for something different, I would say maybe choose the 9mm cartridge. Our government agencies wouldn't be carrying something that was inadequate of getting the job done. So from them switching from the 40 caliber to the 9mm should speak volumes to the popularity and the ballistic properties of the 9mm cartridge. Well, what about recoil? Great question. I'll overlay a video right now where I actually did some slow motion testing of these two specific firearms, and you'll be able to see the differences in recoil from a 40 caliber to a 9mm. Alright, so let's talk about some pros and cons for the 40 caliber versus a 9mm. Of course, everybody wants to talk about stopping power, and there are individuals who think that if you're not carrying a 45 ACP or larger, then you're basically wasting your time. I believe that if you are carrying any firearm, regardless of caliber, size, capacity, anything like that, you're going to be far better off than the person next to you who has nothing. Even if they're carrying a knife, a firearm is going to be a better asset. With technology today, the ballistic differences between the 40 caliber and the 9mm are basically negligible. Yes, a 40 caliber is a bigger bullet traveling at about the same speed, so from a foot-pounds of energy, it's going to be a little different. And that's great for USPSA or anything like that where you need to have a power factor. But beyond that, for a personal defense situation, let's say, I would always want to carry as much ammunition as I could. The 9mm allows for that. Both of these pistols here are identical in size. However, the 9mm allows me to carry 2 more rounds in the standard configuration than the 40 caliber. Those 2 rounds might mean the difference between a situation ending very poorly for you or a situation ending less poorly for you. So the bottom line is this: 9mm versus the 40 caliber, or really any other cartridge. The debate will always be there. There will always be people on both sides of that fence, so to speak. But I am of the belief that the 9mm is plenty capable. Weigh in on this topic below in the comments section. What do you think? What is your carry caliber of choice and why? With that, I will say thank you all very much for watching. I will talk to you again very soon.